Stand by.
What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi with a brand new deck profile video. This time I'll be going back and showing you the updates to my zombie deck. The deck hasn't seen a tremendous number of changes, but with the introduction of a new monster that we have been waiting a very long time to finally get into TCG, we finally have a new variety of abilities that allow us to go into our deck and graveyard far more efficiently than before. And add in that I've changed up the tech cards a little bit, and the deck seems to be infinitely faster than it was before. So let's see where this goes. Starting off on the monster lineup, we'll go right into the level 4s first. A pair of Goblin Zombie. If it goes from the field to the grave, you get to search a zombie monster 12 or less defense from your deck to your hand, and that's about 90% of the deck. It also has an effect that says if it does battle damage, you get to mill the top card off your opponent's deck, but to be perfectly honest, I almost never use this effect. Double Gozuki. I love this monster, and it has a brand new card for the zombie archetype. It is immensely powerful. Once per turn, you get to drop a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard if it's on the field, but if this card itself is sent to the grave, you can banish another zombie from your graveyard, except Gozuki, and special summon any zombie from your hand. But you can only use each effect once per turn, obviously. Now, I want to run this card at 3, but if I'm going to be honest, it tends to clog at anything higher than 2. But at the same time, the card's too powerful to be without at anything lower than 2. Especially considering it helps to accelerate Mizuki itself into the graveyard, who, as we know, banishes itself to summon any zombie from the graveyard. Still running the one Shiranui Smith, it's basically the counterpart to Goblin Zombie. If it's used for the synchro summon of a zombie synchro monster, you get to search any Shiranui card from your deck to your hand. This is pretty much exclusively used to search out the Shiranui traps more than anything, but I have used it on an occasional monster. Also running triple Shiranui Solitaire. Once per turn, you get to tribute a zombie you control to summon any zombie tuner with 0 defense from your deck, which more often than not is going to be the Unizombie that you'll see later. And if itself is banished, you can target any banished Shiranui monster, except Solitaire, and special summon it. And that includes the extra deck monsters. And triple Shiranui Spirit Master. When it's normal summoned, you can special summon any Shiranui monster from your hand or graveyard, except another copy of itself. But if the card you summoned leaves the field, it's banished instead. And Spirit Master says that if it's banished at any time, you get to target a face-up card your opponent's side of the field and pop it. Next we move into all the zombies that are not level 4. Starting with the double Spectral Sword. If it's in the graveyard, you can banish it and another zombie monster, and special summon an extra deck zombie monster, Synchro, whose level is equal to the monsters that you banished. I prefer to call this a Phantom Synchro Summon because since it's just a special summon, it is not an actual Synchro Summon. Beast of the Pharaoh is still used in here as one of. If it's used as Synchro material for a Synchro Summon, you get to special summon any level 4 or lower zombie from your graveyard. It's a great way to reuse that Goblin Zombie that's sitting in there, or even a Unizombie if you haven't used its effect yet. Speaking of Unizombie, once per turn you can send a zombie from your, or a card rather, from your hand to the graveyard to increase a monster's level by 1. You can do the same thing by sending a zombie from your deck to the graveyard, but if you do that, you can only attack with zombie-type monsters. In my opinion, that makes it a bit difficult to use anything that's not a zombie in this deck, which is why my extra deck is almost always nothing but zombies. But it's a fair and powerful utility card, so I'm not going to argue about it too much. And one Endless Decay. I used to run the Vampire 5-star in here, but I realized that sending any card to your opponent's graveyard from their deck is pretty much going to help them in the long run. This card, however, has the ability to special summon itself from your hand if you have 2,000 or less life points, and whenever it's summoned, its attack points immediately become half of whatever your opponent's current life points are. Next we move into the spell lineup, starting off with the double Book of Life. You special summon any zombie monster from your graveyard, and in exchange you also get to banish a monster from your opponent's. Double Dark Hole is obviously a standard in most of my decks, but only because I actually just don't own any Raigekis. Dragon's Mirror has been put to 1 because, well, I didn't see the point in having more than one copy when I only have one target. Foolish Burial is an incredible utility in pretty much any deck. Gold Sarcophagus has been put to 3 because, well, a lot of my cards activate when they're banished, whether it's by their own effects or by another one. And this card lets me put it back in my hand after I banish it straight from the deck in 2 rounds. But more often than not, these cards don't stay banished and end up going to my hand or my field or even my graveyard early. Triple Instant Fusion's been something that I've been recommended to do to my deck for a very long time, and I am so sorry that I waited so long to do it. You pay 1,000 points, special summon a fusion monster level 5 or lower, but it can't attack and it dies at the end of the turn. Obviously you'll want to use that fusion monster before the timer runs out, and more often than not that means using it for synchro and Xyz material. Twin Twisters at 2 is definitely valid in this deck more than a lot of my other decks, purely because a lot of the cards that I need to stay in my deck end up in my hand, and I do need a way to dump them that's not, well, Unizombie. And wrapping up the main deck, we have the Bottomless Trap Hole, standard in all of my decks, Shiranui style Swallow Slash, which lets you tribute a zombie monster to target and destroy 2 cards, and as an added cost, if you can even call it that, you also have to banish another Shiranui monster from your deck. And given that the Shiranui monsters have so much utility when they get banished, I can hardly consider this a cost. And Solemn Warning, which is a staple in pretty much everyone's deck. Next we move into the side deck. We have the 3rd copy of Spectral Sword, the 3rd copy of Goblin Zombie, the 3rd copy of Gozuki, the 3rd copy of Book of Life, the single Brain Control, which I'm loving as a side option, the 2nd copy of Dragon's Mirror, 2 MST in the event that Twin Twisters just isn't enough, Compulsory, and what's supposed to be a Parafiendish Chain, but for the life of me, I can't find the 2nd copy. Double Memory Loss, Mirror Force, and Torrential. And finally, we finish up with the extra deck, which is mostly one-of monsters. Starting off with the level 3 Flame Ghost, not really anything special, it's mainly just used for a rank 3 or a level 6 synchro, or sometimes a level 8 if I'm lucky enough. But it's there in the event that I need it. And in the event that I've already used up my 5-star Sea Monster of Theseus, which has been the highest recommended card in this deck aside from Instant Fusion to pull it out. With it being a 5-star tuner, I have the ability to use it for level 8 and 10 synchros, and even on some instances, a rank 5 Xyz play. Now the Drago Necro Nether Soul Dragon went down to 1 because, frankly, I don't use it very often, even on the opportunities that I had to play it. But it is a good card. It has to be fusion summoned first, it can't kill anything in battle, but if it does battle something, its attack goes to 0, and if it has an original level, it summons a token whose attack and level are the same as the monster that Drago Necro battled. Now the 2 monsters in this extra deck that I don't summon legitimately very often, outside of the fusions of course, are Archfiend Zombie Skull and Revived King Hades, or Hades, or however it's pronounced. Archfiend Zombie Skull has an effect that says as long as it's face up on the field, you get to make all your zombie monsters indestructible by card effects, so Dark Hole, Raigeki, and the like are pretty much useless. In addition, Revived King Hades says as long as it's face up on the field, all your zombie monsters can negate the effects of anything that they battle, including in the graveyard. So together, while these 2 cards are not summonable by normal means in this deck, because I don't run Plague Spreader Zombie, or in the case of Zombie Skull, low-level zombies, it does have plenty of utility if you have the ability to perform what I call the Phantom Synchro Summon mechanic using Spectral Sword. Now Samurai Saga is an easy monster to summon legitimately. Once per turn while it's on the field during either player's turn, you have the ability to return a banished zombie to your extra deck or main deck, and if you do, all monsters your opponent controls who have attack equal to or less than the monster you just returned go to defense mode. So this makes it easy to reuse your banished Shogun Sagas in the event that you did a Shogun Saga summoning loop. And speaking of Shogun Saga, if it's summoned, you get to banish a zombie out of your graveyard and give its attack points to Shogun Saga for the rest of the turn. Now if it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you get to return a zombie that's banished with 0 defense back to your graveyard, which means you can use it again for future card combos. But by far the strongest synchro in this deck is Sun Saga. He's the hardest to summon, of course, with a level of 10, but I have summoned him on multiple occasions. Now his ability is that when he's summoned, you can take all banished and in-graveyard zombie-type synchro monsters, even ones that are not Shiranuis, and return them to the extra deck. And if you do this, you get to destroy cards on the field up to the number that you returned. Now here's what's interesting, this does not target. In addition, as long as he's face up on the field, you can banish a zombie-type Shiranui monster out of your graveyard in place of your monsters being destroyed. So this card even allows you to get around Dark Hole, although it's not as thorough a protection as Zombie Skull. And then to the Xyz monsters, we have one copy of Ghost Alucard, who can detach a material to destroy a set card, and, well, let's be honest, that's really all that matters. Now the rank 5 Crimson Knight Vampire Bram has been summoned a lot more often than I was expecting. By detaching a material, you can take an opponent's monster, but that monster is the only one that can attack for the rest of the turn. So bear in mind that if you attack with him first, then go to main phase 2 and use his ability, it's still completely legitimate. Now the monster in the Xyz pile that I summon the least is actually Pilgrim Reaper. You can detach a material from it to make both players mill 5, which sounds good on paper, but it's not as good in practice. And its attack points and defense points are equal to the number of dark attribute monsters in your both players' graveyards, times 200. But this deck is mostly Earth and Fire, so that's not really useful. It's mainly just a late game mill in the event that I need it. And finally, we have number 23, Lancelot. It can attack directly. If it does, it pops up a card on the field, and you can detach a material to negate a spell, trap, or monster effect. And that is the deck. Like I said before, there isn't a tremendous number of changes to this deck other than the ones that were recommended to me by my audience, mainly just Gozuki and the use of Sea Monster of Theseus with Instant Fusion. But I'd like to think that the text that I included in addition to those recommendations make this deck a bit more viable and a bit more fun to play. I hope you guys liked the deck profile video, and if you can think of any ways that I can improve this deck any further than I have, feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
What's the next stage? What's the next stage?